Good morning. It is Wednesday, October 13th, 2021. And let it be known, this morning we have a very special guest, a special advisor to President Biden and the Director of Public Engagement at the White House, Cedric Richmond, is expected to join us shortly. But first, of course, let us bring on the President and CEO of the National Newspaper Publishers Association, Dr. Benjamin F. Chavis Jr. Good morning, Dr. Chavis.
Good morning, Stacy Brown. On behalf of the National Newspaper Publishers Association, the NNPA, Karen Carter Richards, our distinguished chair, and all 230 African-American owned newspapers and media companies across the country, we're glad to be here on another historic day for the Black press.
Absolutely.
We're not only going to have the Honorable Cedric Richmond with us on Let It Be Known this morning, but you and I in a couple of hours will be inside of the White House for an exclusive with our publishers, the Black Press of America, talking with the White House about the progress of the Biden-Harris administration. So we're looking forward to it today.
Yeah, and here I am, Dr. Chavis. Black Lives Matter Plaza is right behind me. Yes. The White House is right across the street, and we are ready to roll. But first, of course, let's start with the news headlines. In Philadelphia, an all too familiar plea is circulating. The city's police department said it needs the public's help in finding 13-year-old Jada Blackwell, who was last seen on Sunday, October 10th, along East Haynes Street in the city of brotherly love. Jada stands about 5 feet 2 inches, and she weighs about 130 pounds. While authorities said they couldn't describe her clothing, Jada has brown eyes and black hair. And anyone with information about Jada, please call 215-686-3353 or dial 911. And unfortunately, Jada Blackwell isn't an isolated case. On June 11, 17-year-old Janiyah Kane went missing from her home in Chicago. Authorities said she has black hair and brown eyes, and she stands 5 feet 6 inches tall. Janiyah reportedly weighs 140 pounds and frequently changes her hairstyle. Anyone with information should call 1-800-843-5678 or 911. And also this morning, it's been 9 months since loved ones last saw Craig Lyles of Waterford, Michigan. The 33-year-old's disappearance has stunned his distraught family, who said he's always in contact with his loved ones. He was actually the glue to his family, his aunt, Sharon Dillon, said the other day. Authorities reported that they recovered boots near the apartment complex where Lyles lived that could belong to him. If anybody knows anything, we want them to call the Waterford Police Department immediately. If anyone has information, call 248-618-6041 or 911. The National Newspaper Publishers Association routinely keeps track of missing individuals of color and has endorsed the mission of the Black and Missing Foundation, whose aim is to help families of those missing, shine a spotlight on them, and provide needed resources as they search for their loved ones. Dr. Chavis, this is an ongoing situation. We've been reporting now for years about the plight of missing African Americans.
Absolutely. And of course, we need to challenge the mainstream media. They don't pay attention when Black girls are missing, when Black boys are missing, when Black people are missing. But that's the role of the Black press. So thank you for continuing not only the great series that you've done, particularly on missing Black girls, but on missing Black people in general. We're going to continue to let people know. We're going to continue to help the families try to find their loved ones or to find out what happened to their loved ones. This is the role of the Black press.
Yeah, another role of the Black press. And Dr. Chavis, we're going to show you a video that's extremely disturbing. An officer with the Indianapolis Metropolitan Police Department has been criminally charged and should face termination after body camera video.
Not going to do this, right?
Handcuffed man in the head. I think they're ready for that.
Not going to do this, right?
Stop. You're done. You're done.
You. No, nobody cares what you're saying.
No, Karen, nobody cares what you do either.
Not really.
You understand that?
Yeah, I'm not.
You
I'm not the
understand?
one. I'm not the one out here complaining.
No, that was a thing. Nobody cares what you do anymore.
I know nobody's out here complaining.
Nobody cares what you do anymore. You understand that?
Lean back.
Nobody cares what you do anymore.
Lean back.
How the fuck am I gonna lean back with the fucking you hold my belt?
Look,
You're not going to do this.
right? We're not going to do this, right?
Stop. You're done. You're done. You're done.
Are we done now?
Roll over. You're done.
I can't.
Roll over.
I can't.
You're done. There you go. You're done. There you go. There you go. Done. Police brutality.
Just link him up.
There you go. Police brutality.
Yeah, I guess as you see that, it's extremely disturbing. There's really no words anymore. That is certainly why we have folks like Attorney Ben Crump, who is considered America's Black Attorney General. I think we've seen enough of that video. It's just so disturbing, Dr. Chavis.
Absolutely. It's, racially motivated police brutality is terrible. Not only in Indianapolis, in Dayton, it's all over the United States. And we're hoping that the Congress will reconsider the George Floyd Justice in Policing Act. I think the Senate really failed all of America, not just Black America, by not passing this bill. The House did what it was supposed to do, but we're still calling for criminal justice reform, police reform.
Yeah, and the officer there is Sergeant Eric Huxley. The Marion County District Attorney Office has charged him with official misconduct and battery with moderate bodily injury in connection to the September 24th arrest of Jermaine Vaughn. It's just so disturbing. Also in the news this morning, as we move along, the House of Representatives, speaking of, have approved an extension of the nation's debt limit through early December after the Senate passed the stopgap measure last week in a bid to avert catastrophic default and economic disaster. Now that the Democratic-controlled House has passed the short-term extension, it is clear for President Joe Biden's signature. Dr. Chavis, Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen had warned all the lawmakers that the federal government would likely run out of cash earlier this month, or later this month, I should say, by October 18th to be exact, unless Congress raised the debt ceiling, setting up a ticking clock in high stakes. And I tell you, they came almost right up against the deadline to get this thing done.
Well, again, the Biden-Harris administration and the Democrats in the House and the Senate, they're doing what they're supposed to do to protect and ensure a future for the American people. It is the Republicans. They are not only recalcitrant, they're blockers. They're blockers to progress. And I hope that when people in some states get ready to go, like in Virginia, get ready to go to the polls, that people have to remember who are the blockers to progress, who's attacking democracy, who's trying to suppress the vote, who's trying to deny adequate health care for everybody so we can get out of the pandemic. And I think it's clear. I think people have a great responsibility and motive to go to the polls in record numbers. Because at the end of the day, Stacy, we're going to have to replace some of these people in the Senate. We're going to have to replace some of these people in the House. It's time to clean out the blockers.
Yeah. And Dr. Chavis, when President Biden, or then candidate Joe Biden, was running for president last year, I remember it being February, and it looked from the outside that it was pretty bleak that Biden, the former vice president at the time, would have an opportunity to even claim his party's nomination. Then something special happened. He sat down with the National Newspaper Publishers Association, you in particular, and our publishers was there down in South Carolina as well. And the next day, he got the endorsement, a special endorsement, a very key endorsement from Representative Clyburn. His candidacy took off from then. And the president from then, Dr. Chavis, even before then, but certainly since then, had pledged that he was going to do everything in his power to level the playing field for African Americans and others of color. And that included HBCUs. Has the president done the job that he said he was going to do? Some say absolutely, but there are some with short-term memory, forgetting the last 4 years. Well, I tell you who doesn't have short-term memory. Our special guest this morning, the special advisor to the president and the director of the Office of Public Outreach, Cedric Richmond. Good morning, Director Richmond.
Good morning, and thank you all for having me.
Good morning, Congressman Richmond, and thank you so much for your leadership. First, as a member of the Congressional Black Caucus for years, representing New Orleans, and then the outstanding job you were with Joe Biden when he was campaigning. A lot of people said, well, why is Cedric spending this time with Vice President Biden at the time? And we now know that you had a foresight, you envision what is going on now. We salute you and what you continue to do in the White House. And later on today, we are looking forward to having a one-on-one with you inside the White House. So thank you for joining us this morning, the Black Press of America, on Let It Be Known.
Thank you. And probably should have been here a lot earlier than today. But what we've been trying to do is keep our head down, keep working. We've lost over 700,000 Americans to COVID. We're digging ourselves out of a recession, and we've just been trying to do the work. And even with our HBCUs, which is what we started with, we haven't gone out and told people that through the American Rescue Plan, we gave HBCUs $4.2 billion, 1.6 in capital finance debt forgiveness that really didn't have much to do with COVID. It was because we understood the impact it would have on these universities. And so we're going to keep investing in our HBCUs because we know how important they are, but we also know how important the Black press is also. So, it's venues like this where we get to ask and answer those hard questions. And, the most important one is, what have you done for me lately? And we're going to keep working. And I just heard you all talk about police reform.
Yes.
Police reform broke down in the Congress, but when it did, we knew we needed to act no matter what, but we didn't want to be the reason why Republicans walked away from the table with Senator Booker and Representative Bass. But when we saw that they couldn't get anywhere, the president acted. He directed Department of Justice, DOJ banned chokeholds and reformed the use of no-knock warrants and carotid holds in all federal law enforcement agencies. And so, and now we're embarking on executive orders, and we're going to bring in everybody to the table to hear their voice and to see what people want. So we're just going to, we have to keep working. This is too critical of a time for Black people in America for us to get it wrong. And if there's anything that I think the HBC community knows, is that the president has had a very ambitious plan when it came to the amount of funding that he wanted to give them. We're still, no matter what, will double or triple their all-time funding. But we wanted to make long-term investments into the facilities at our HBCUs. And that's still our goal. And we're going to work with Congress to try to get them where we want to be. But it's a process.
And we should point out, too, that the director is an HBCU grad himself. Our vice president, Kamala Harris, is an HBCU grad, a proud HBCU grad. Both of them are very proud HBCU grads. And the administration has other members that are HBCU grads. Director Richmond, is it, as I said at the top, short-term memory seems to be the theme here, because we tend to overlook what happened the last 4 years. Is that the case? Do you think that folks, especially the media, have overlooked what the country went through the last 4 years and now have put all this on you guys' shoulders?
Well, look, HBCUs did get some advancement in the last 4 years, but that was because the Congressional Black Caucus went to work to get it done. And we were able to get it done even in a hostile environment. But I think that far too many times that people, you don't get credit for things. And the president was honest and said, I want to do more for HBCUs than anybody else, basically combined. I mean, HBCUs get about $1 billion a year in funding. So the truth is you can't cut $30 billion out of $1 billion. We had a goal to provide more funding for HBCUs, which we're going to do. And at the end of the day, it's going to be significantly more than they've ever received before, but we still want it to be transformational. When I got to Morehouse, my science lab at Morehouse was not as nice as my science lab at my high school. And those are the things that we want to do. We want to make sure, and we're doing this now, make sure that those tier one research institutions, if they want to apply for all these millions and billions of dollars in research, well, you need to partner with and bring along a minority serving institution or HBCU so we can build capacity in those schools so that they can move up to tier one institutions and get that research, especially when we start looking at health disparities and all of those things. But here's where the rubber meets the road. And I don't want to only give you the rosy side of it, but I want to give you all the facts. This piece of legislation started at around $6 trillion. We introduced it at 3.5 trillion. And then Congress wrote up what they thought could fit in that 3.5 trillion. Now it looks like we're going to end up somewhere way below the $3.5 trillion. So you can't do $6 trillion worth of things in, let's just say 2.3, let's say 2 trillion. You just can't do it. So things are going to get haircuts, and there are a bunch of deserving things in there, especially when you start talking about equity and for the Black community, that we have to continue. The child tax credit that lifted 34% of Black families out of poverty, 50% of Black children out of poverty. We want to put real money into Black maternal health. Black women are dying twice, at a rate twice their white counterparts. When we look at childbirth, so the list goes on in terms of all of the needs in the community. And the truth is, we're trying to reach it. And we want to meet it.
I'm sorry, you mentioned that $3 trillion price tag, but can you just, for once, we keep hearing the 3 trillion, and what folks don't seem to understand that it's over a period, I believe 10 years?
It's over a 10-year period.
Yeah, so it breaks down. It's not a $3 trillion one lump sum thing here. It's less money than what's spent in the military. It's less money than what's spent in a lot of other areas. But this plan, the key is that it helps so many entities if you have the entire $3.5 trillion, particularly HBCUs, correct?
Absolutely. And that's why we wanted the $3.5 trillion. And we didn't get there by saying we want to spend $3.5 trillion. We got there by adding up all the needs, all the investments that we wanted to make into the country and into communities of color. And a lot of those investments would be first-time investments that were historic. For example, community gun violence. Community gun violence, we were going to invest $5 billion in it because we know the toll that violent crime is having on communities. And it's in a very creative way to get violence interrupted, to invest in recreation, invest in after-school programs, and fight crime the way that you should, and that is by investment. And so, look, all of these things compete, but we were here to talk about HBCUs. We are focused on our HBCUs. So even if you took the $40 billion, which the proposal was, and for HBCUs to compete for half of that, so that's $20 billion spread over 10 years, you're talking about in the neighborhood of $2 billion a year. And if you ask me if we're going to increase funding the HBCUs in the neighborhood of $2 billion a year, I think we're going to come close. And so it may not be in the exact same program. And Congress, we're working with them to write it and to figure out the competition formula, because we do believe that like-kind schools should compete against like-kind schools. And so that means that, those schools that have traditionally been tier one and have the grant writers and the lobbyists, they should compete against each other. And then, schools that, I'd hate to say like-kind because Morehouse is much better than Howard, but
you have to be careful. You have to be careful.
I know the vice president isn't here, so I can get away with it. Right. So if you look at Morehouse and Howard and Florida A&M and Tuskegee and Jackson State and Southern and Alcorn and all the list of our great HBCUs, Morgan State, Hampton, if you go down the list of those, they should be competing against each other for a separate pool of money. And we still think we're going to get that done.
Well, Councilman Richmond, as a proud graduate of Howard University, HU, I want you to know I was on the phone earlier this morning with the president of Tennessee State University, Dr. Glenda Glover. In fact, today she has an op-ed in the Black press about some of the misinformation that was put out there in mainstream media, trying to play down what the Biden-Harris administration has done for HBCUs already, record funding already this year. Can you talk about the importance of our HBCUs, the Black press, the Black church, but particularly HBCUs? We work at NAFIO, Dr. Leslie Baskerville, the National Association for Equal Opportunity in Higher Education. I just want you to know that Black college presidents, they're on the phone, they're writing, and certainly we're going to support in the African-American press to get the news out. There's so much misinformation. Can you just, what's your view on how would a group like AP or Newsweek or USA Today spread misinformation about the Biden-Harris administration to HBCUs?
Well, that's what we're seeing. And so if we just go back to 2016 and the election that elected President Trump, you will see that misinformation targeted at African Americans was the motive and the method used by the Russian trolls and misinformation campaign. And so whether it was telling people, oh, you can vote by the internet, or, you don't have to go today, whatever they did, they targeted it. And I'm not telling you what I think, I'm telling you what I know. They targeted at minority communities in an effort to suppress the vote. So as much as we're fighting for voting rights and doubling the size of the voting rights section, suing in court, putting money on the street, all of those things we're doing, misinformation is a real problem. And so part of the question is, why now? Well, you have a hotly contested governor's race in Virginia that is home to several HBCUs. And one way to tamp down our young people's enthusiasm to vote is to show that either the system or people are not recognizing them, not investing in them. So why bother going and vote? And so when you tell them that the Biden administration cut $30 billion from HBCUs, then it's a gut punch to them. Now, it's a flat lie. Everybody has debunked it, but we have to make sure, and that's why the Black press is so important, because sometimes people need the unfiltered truth. Well, all the time they need it, and you all provide that. And so I'm just happy to have a chance to kind of clear the record on that and some of the other things that we're doing in the administration. And I think that, you made the offer, and I'll accept and double down, but I will come back as often as possible to give updates on what the administration is doing. And so it's important. And look, I saw, and I'll be real quick, but I saw someone post that I should talk about HBCU graduation rates. HBCU graduation rates are in great shape. And I'll tell you why. Because what people too often do is compare HBCU graduation rates. Let's take two specific examples. And they'll compare Southern University to LSU.
Right.
But what they don't compare it to is the Black graduation rate at LSU compared to the graduation rate at Southern. And then here's the other part of it. You have, and I give this to credit to Dr. Kimbrough, he came up with this analogy. You don't look at, you should look at Black colleges and the HBCUs and measure them in a different light. Because in Olympic diving, if you dive off the diving board and you do a perfect, just plain old dive, no splash, you're going to get about a 6. You know why? Because there was no degree of difficulty. So if you look at HBCUs that take students, many times take students that come in, may or may not be taking remedial, may or may not have AP courses, but most of them came from public schools in cities where they were underfunded. They take those students and they shape them into leaders in the community. And so when you look at that graduation rate and you look at what they're producing, it is in stark contrast to their counterparts. And I believe it, I know it, I've lived it. And we appreciate that work that is done by our HBCUs. Now, do we need to help them improve their graduation rate? Absolutely. But graduation rate is not the number that I go by, because too often at HBCUs, kids are matriculating through, they're making good grades, but they can't afford to go back that next year. That's not the school's fault. That's not the student's fault. That's our fault. That's government's fault. So that's why I don't talk graduation rates too much, because it is not the key indicator for me of the success of a school. I think there are a number of other ways we can look at and measure the success, but we will do it, and we'll keep pushing our HBCUs.
Yeah, and along those lines, Director Richmond, you talk about graduation rates, but look who HBCU graduates. Those schools graduate, right? They graduate doctors, lawyers. They graduate people into the STEM field. The talent is amazing that comes out of HBCUs. Isn't that the primary reason in itself that we should be looking to fund HBCUs? And James Wright says state legislators and private donors need to fund HBCUs better. Isn't that really what we're striving for, is that type of excellence?
Absolutely. And I'll just go one further. And HBCU graduates need to do a better job of funding HBCUs, and so that we can build those big endowments. So actually what we're doing as a government, we're trying to make up for the fact that HBCUs don't have the same endowment as other schools. So we want to help them with those capital investments into the schools. But, you look at corporations and you look at people who give big $100 million gifts to Harvard and Stanford and schools like that already have billion-dollar endowments. The question is that money best utilized going to them, or would it make sense to send it to a university that's producing outstanding students but is underfunded? And we have to do that. And if you look at what is happening too much in the South, is that they're cutting the money for public education, all public education, year after year after year, and at the same time telling people in the South that we're doing something good for you by making government smaller. And it's just a flat lie. You do well for people by investing in them, giving them access to education at an affordable and accessible rate, making sure that they can graduate and chart their own destiny. And so we're trying to right all of those wrongs, including the wrong by state legislatures that are not matching or drawing down all the federal money because they don't put up the money for the HBCU land grants, but they put up the matching money for the white counterparts. And so we're looking at all of that.
Yeah, well, Director Richmond, the Black press certainly appreciates you, the Biden administration, for allowing us to have this access. We will certainly, our publishers are looking forward to the 11:30 now time that they'll have with you. And Dr. Chavis, a quick closing thought with the director for this morning.
Well, again, I just want to salute the Honorable Cedric Richmond and all the staff. You know, a lot of times, Brother Richmond, can you just talk about diversity, equity, including? I mean, we're going to do it a little bit more in the 11:30 hour, but we're so proud that what you are doing, what Vice President Kamala Harris is doing, you're representing the best of the HBCU community. And I just want to let you know that our college presidents, I'm in touch with them. All of them are activating. You mentioned Virginia, at Virginia Union, at Norfolk State, at all of our schools, at Virginia State and St. Petersburg. All of the HBCUs are making sure they're getting out to vote in the state of Virginia, as well as the other states where voting is so important. And we just want to thank you. A lot of times, representatives of our community, we don't get a chance to say thank you to President Biden. Thank you to Vice President Harris, and thank you, Congressman Richmond, for all of the work that you do for us inside of the White House. It's very important that you're there every day with the President of the United States, with the Vice President, and the whole team. And I want you to know that we're not going to sleep in the Black press. We're going to stay woke, but also stay activated and stay mobilized. God bless you, and thank you for this time.
Thank you, and I'll see you later.
Thank you again, everyone, for joining us. And remember this, let it be known. Be selective, be objective, and always be an asset to the collective. We will see you tomorrow.